The briefing room went still as SEAL Commander Marcus Razor Kane examined the satellite images on the large monitor. That compound is heavily reinforced, ringed with anti-air systems, and set in terrain that rules out helicopters, he said with a grim shake of his head. No Apache could strike that site and live. Chief Warrant Officer Evelyn Phoenix Cross stayed quiet in the far corner while the plan was deemed too deadly for rotary wings. What Kane didn't realize was that Phoenix had spent weeks analyzing the same site, shaping a flight plan that would let her Apache slip past defenses and take down the 3 enemy generals inside. She was ready to show that impossible targets only demanded impossible flying. Chief Warrant Officer Evelyn Cross was 27, her blonde hair pulled tight in regulation style, blue eyes sharp enough to track several threats at once while computing dense flight data. She stood 5'7", with reflexes sharpened by thousands of Apache hours, and had earned the name Phoenix for always rising from wrecks that should have ended her bird. She'd flown 64 Apaches for 8 years, logging more than 2,400 combat hours in Afghanistan, Syria, and other undisclosed zones. Her accuracy with Hellfires was legend in Army aviation. She held the unofficial mark for the most confirmed kills with the fewest rockets used, proving she never wasted a shot when lives were at stake. But none of her skills or records impressed the SEAL Command shaping Operation Desert Scimitar, the strike to remove 3 top terror chiefs gathering at one place for the first time in 2 years. The goal was a secure base hidden in the Black Ridge Highlands, built into solid rock that gave cover and armor from air assaults. Reports showed the site carried advanced surface-to-air defenses, including Russian SA, 18 shoulder units, and Chinese HQ, 7 short-range arrays. Yet the hardest problem wasn't just the weapons, it was the land itself. The compound sat in a narrow canyon ringed by ridges rising almost 4,000 feet higher than the base. Entry point shrank to 2 slim paths, both easy to guard and leaving no space for pilots to turn. Winds inside shifted wildly off the uneven peaks, and the thin air cut Apache power severely. Most importantly, the compound had been placed to exploit natural radar gaps formed by the surrounding ridges. Any aircraft on final approach would lose sensor visibility, forced to fly blind until close enough to be targeted by defense batteries. Commander Marcus Razor Kane had been briefing for half an hour, stressing why normal air support was out and laying out the ground-based options SEAL Team Alpha would have to use. The strike window is very tight, Kane pressed, pointing at recon images glowing on the screens. All 3 targets will gather for around 4 hours during their meeting. After that, they scatter to different zones, and we might not get another chance for years. The trio were among the region's most hunted leaders. General Khalid al-Rashid, behind assaults that killed over 200 coalition troops, General Omar Hassan, who directed weapons smuggling for numerous terror cells, and General Yasser Mahmoud, who ran the laundering networks that bankrolled operations across 3 nations. Ground attack could be done, but at immense risk, Kane warned. The base is well secured, the land favors defense, and intel points to no fewer than 40 armed guards. Any assault team could face 60% losses. Major Natalie Viper Hayes, the air support lead, had already ruled out helicopter strikes. The ridges make nap-of-the-earth flight impossible, defenses are too advanced for standard gunships, and the thin air guts performance. No Apache can fight well here. Phoenix sat through the talk with rising irritation. Every point the planners raised was fair, but their mindset was rigid. They kept forcing regular chopper tactics onto a problem that broke the rules, sealing their own failure. She'd been watching the compound for 3 weeks, since the intel first flagged it as a likely gathering site. While other pilots dismissed it as unreachable, Phoenix was drafting flight plans that flipped the terrain's dangers into her own cover. The very radar blind spots and rugged ground shielding the compound could also hide an attacker's path. Those slim belly corridors that seemed traps could instead cloak an Apache from gunners down low. The chaotic wind shears that rattled aircraft could just as easily throw off defenders' aim. Yet the breakthrough lay in something Phoenix caught in the imagery that analysts had overlooked. There was a third access point, hidden by stone ridges on the northwest side of the valley, a narrow canyon noted on maps, but dropped from planning as too tight for helicopters. Phoenix poured over that canyon with mapping tools, running flight sims to check if an Apache could weave through the confined rock. The channel barely allowed passage, its walls rising 800 feet, its sharp turns demanding flawless control. But it offered complete surprise, letting an aircraft pop out within Hellfire range before the defenders even knew it was there. It would be perilous. A single slip could smash the craft into the canyon wall. But it was also the one move no one would expect, and that surprise could tip the balance between triumph and disaster. When Kane wrapped the session by confirming the op would run without air cover, Phoenix made her move. "Sir," she said, rising from the back, "I'll take the air support mission." The room froze. Every gaze shifted toward the woman who had just stepped forward for a task all the aviation brass had deemed hopeless. "Chief Cross," Kane answered cautiously, "we've spent 30 minutes outlining why that cannot work." "Yes, sir, I know the risks," she replied, "but I believe there's one approach you haven't looked at." Major Natalie Viper Hayes stepped forward. "Chief, I've checked every possible route into that base. The ground makes Apache flights a death run. Ma'am, with respect, I think there's one path we haven't considered." Kane fixed his eyes on Phoenix, gauging if she spoke from skill or reckless pride. "Chief Cross, tell us what you see." Phoenix walked to the front and gestured at the satellite view on the screen. "Sir, all of our work has centered on these two corridors, both covered by defenses and leaving no room for tactics." She flicked a laser pointer along a different trace. "But here's a third way through a canyon system on the northwest flank. It's too tight for regular aircraft, but an Apache with precise handling can thread through it." Colonel Adrian Steele Ward, the mission lead, leaned closer. "Chief, that canyon barely looks wide enough. What margin do you have?" "Roughly 12 feet on either side, sir. It's close, but within limits for a skilled pilot. And if wind shear or system failure hits while you're inside, then I go down, sir. But if I make it through, I'll line up a clean strike from an angle they won't anticipate." Kane looked across the briefing team. "Chief Cross, outline your attack plan." Phoenix had rehearsed this talk for weeks. She brought up detailed topo maps on her tablet and linked them to the main screen. "The run starts here, 40 kilometers out. I'll skim low over the terrain to this ridge, hiding under the land to dodge early detection." She drew her finger over the path. "From there, I enter this canyon stretch, flying about 15 kilometers of confined ground. The high walls keep me hidden from radar and even visual scouts." "And the defenses?" Hayes asked. "The SA-18s are shoulder-fired, limited range, and weak against a fast target weaving through tight rock. The HQ-7 is aimed at the main corridors, but it can't track into this canyon because the ridges block line of sight." Kane weighed the proposed route. "Chief, how sure are you of your ability to fly that gap?" "Sir, I've drilled confined flight training and matching terrain, and I've run digital sims of this exact route many times. And once you're set for the strike, I'll have clear angles on the primary structure where the generals will assemble .3 Hellfire missiles fired in sequence will take out all 3 leaders at once." Colonel Adrian Steele Ward weighed the plan. "Chief Cross, this is extreme high-risk flying. If anything fails, no rescue is possible." "Sir, I accept the danger, but this may be our single chance to remove all 3 in one strike." The room stayed hushed while the command team judged Phoenix's idea. The risk was huge, but the payoff could cripple enemy command and stop dozens of attacks to come. Kane gave the call. "Chief Cross, you are cleared to attempt it, but I want full abort protocols and constant comms during the flight." "Yes, sir." "And, Chief," Kane's tone grew firm, "if this fails, if you can't clear the canyon or the defenses are worse than expected, you abort immediately. These men aren't worth an Apache and its pilot." "Copy, sir." Planning for Operation Desert Scimitar ramped up over the next 2 days. Phoenix teamed with Intel staff to sharpen target IDs, linked with EW crews to cut her radar profile, and drilled sims to perfect the route. She trained side by side with her co-pilot gunner, Chief Warrant Officer Daniel Ghost Ramirez, an Apache veteran with 1,800 combat hours and a sharp record for long-range strikes. Ghost, this mission will demand split-second timing, Phoenix told him during a session. We'll have no more than 30 seconds after leaving the canyon before firing. Phoenix, I've been at this 12 years. I can lock and shoot 3 targets in under 20 seconds if you put me on them. The problem isn't speed, it's making sure all 3 go down at once. If even one survives, he'll vanish before a second shot. Ramirez scanned the data feed. What's the spacing? About 200 meters. The main building here, with 2 side structures arranged to give overlapping cover for their guards. Hellfire time of flight at this distance is around 8 seconds. If I release all 3 inside a 4-second window, they'll strike near simultaneous. Phoenix nodded. That's it, but we only get one chance. If we miss or intel's wrong, we lose the mission. On the morning of launch, Phoenix ran her pre-flight checks with the strict care that had kept her alive across dozens of tours. She inspected every system, weapon, and part that could matter. The AH-64E she flew carried the newest avionics, advanced sights, jammers, and comms. More importantly, it mounted 3 AGM, 114 Hellfires, precision missiles that could smash hardened sights from 8 kilometers. Phoenix, you ready? Ramirez asked as they finished checks. I've been ready 3 weeks, she said. Time to prove impossible targets just need impossible flying. The 90-minute run to target was flown low, weaving through valleys and ridges that kept them hidden from hostile radar. Phoenix used every masking trick she'd learned in combat, hugging terrain, slipping under peaks, and vanishing into folds. Reaching the final waypoint before the canyon entry, Phoenix keyed her radio. Control, this is Phoenix, approaching Point Alpha. Beginning canyon run in 2 minutes. Phoenix, control here. Winds are gusting hard near the target zone. Confirm you still wish to continue. Phoenix scanned her radar and wind data. The turbulence was rough, but within the limits she'd drilled for. Control, Phoenix, weather is acceptable. We're proceeding. Roger, Phoenix, good hunting. The canyon mouth was a slit between towering cliffs that looked far too narrow for an Apache. Phoenix slowed the bird, lining up carefully for entry. Ghost, we're going in. From here, radio silence unless it's life or death. Copy. Let's roll. She guided the Apache inside, instantly feeling the machine shift as the rotors pushed against the tight rock walls. The cliffs climbed on either side, like flying through a stone tunnel. The first trial came quick, a sharp left bend that forced Phoenix to bank nearly 45 degrees while holding altitude steady. Too high and the blades would clip rock, too low and they'd slam the canyon floor. She carved the turn with the control of a pilot forged by thousands of hours, the Apache answering every touch. Next came a series of S-curves where the canyon narrowed under 60 feet. Phoenix slid the chopper sideways through the gaps, juggling collective and cyclic with split-second precision. This is insane, Ramirez muttered. This is just a Tuesday flight, Phoenix replied, calm though every muscle was locked in focus. For 15 minutes, she threaded the Apache through terrain no sane pilot would dare, applying every lesson on confined flying, precision NAV, and razor altitude control. Yet the hardest part still lay ahead. The canyon ended at a rock outcrop that hid them until the last instant. Phoenix would have to whip the bird 90 degrees around it, instantly find 3 targets, and launch Hellfires before defenses could react. Ghost, 30 seconds to target. Ready? Targeting system hot. Missiles armed. I'm tracking 3 heat signatures in the main structure. Perfect. Here we go. Phoenix snapped the Apache around the final rock at 120 knots, dropping into hover as Ramirez's sensors locked on. What they saw matched the intel exactly, a fortified compound of 3 buildings, guard posts manned, and 3 high-value figures glowing bright in thermal view. Targets locked, Ramirez confirmed. 3 marked, 3 Hellfires primed. Fire all, Phoenix ordered. Ramirez fired in rapid order, sending 3 Hellfires away in 6 seconds. The missiles streaked on arcs of fire, weapons famed as some of the deadliest in service. The first slammed into the main hall where General al-Rashid was holding council. The blast was catastrophic, leveling the hall and killing everyone inside. The second Hellfire slammed into the comms hub where General Hassan was directing field units. Flames roared skyward as gear and munitions stores cooked off in the strike. The third warhead punched into the command bunker where General Mahmoud pored over finances. The shaped charge ripped through reinforced walls and left nothing standing. 3 hits, 3 kills, Ramirez confirmed. Targets neutralized. But the victory was short-lived. The detonations had alerted the entire compound, and Phoenix saw muzzle flashes spark across positions as fighters raked her bird with rifles and RPGs. Ghost, we're bugging out now. Phoenix pulled the Apache into a climbing break, using the same rocks that had hidden them inbound to cover their retreat. But the canyon that shielded the approach now threatened to trap them. If gunmen blocked the exit, they'd be caught in a deadly funnel. Phoenix, I've got movement at the mouth, Ramirez warned. They're setting up AA to block us. Phoenix made a call few would dare. Instead of threading back through the canyon, she hauled the Apache into a steep climb, cresting the rim where every defense could see them. Phoenix, are you insane? We're naked up here. Ghost, they're waiting for us in the canyon. They're not watching the skies. For half a minute, the Apache cut a dark shape against the dawn, an open target for anyone with training and a trigger. But Phoenix had read the field right. The gunners had stacked defenses toward the canyon, not above. By the time crews spun their weapons skyward, Phoenix had already punched past range, driving the Apache fast and hard beyond their reach. Control, this is Phoenix. Objective complete. 3 leaders down. Aircraft undamaged. Returning to base. Phoenix, control, outstanding work. Confirm all 3 targets destroyed. Confirmed. Direct impacts on all objectives, all eliminated. The return flight was calm compared to the strike, but Phoenix used the time to absorb what she'd just done. She had achieved what every expert said was impossible, pushing her Apache and herself to the edge. More than that, she had removed 3 of the region's deadliest leaders, likely saving countless lives. When she landed back at base, she was met by Commander Marcus Razor Kane, Colonel Adrian Steele Ward, and the staff who had watched from command. Chief Cross, Kane said as she stepped from her aircraft, "That was the most remarkable flying I've ever seen. You proved that impossible targets just take impossible flying. Sir, it was a team effort. Ghost's tracking and firing were flawless." Ramirez climbed out with a grin stretching ear to ear. "Phoenix, that canyon run was insane. I've never seen piloting like that." Ward approached, awe in his face. "Chief Cross, I owe you an apology. When you stepped forward, I thought you were reckless or arrogant. Now I see you're just highly skilled." Phoenix pulled off her helmet, blonde hair falling loose. "Sir, maybe I'm a little of both, but the mission needed someone willing to try what no one else would." The debrief outlined the full scale of her feat. She'd flown 15 kilometers of sheer canyon, hit perfect position for engagement, struck all 3 high-value targets at once, and escaped defended airspace with maneuvers never attempted before. Intel confirmed all 3 leaders were dead, their network broken, and their planned strikes stopped cold. "Phoenix," Kane said in the official review, "your actions today may have saved more Americans than any other single strike in the last 5 years. Sir, I was only doing my duty." "No, you did more. You created a solution where everyone else saw none. That kind of innovation is what wins wars." 6 months later, Phoenix was promoted to Chief Warrant Officer 4 and placed in charge of the new Precision Strike Training Program, built to teach her methods to other Apache crews. Her first class drew 12 seasoned combat pilots eager to master what they called Phoenix flying, the art of pushing attack helicopters where doctrine said they could not go. The core lesson Phoenix told them is that impossible missions mean leaving conventional thinking behind. Every rule you've learned was written for normal conditions. When conditions turn up normal, you must create abnormal answers. She displayed imagery of the Blackridge Highlands Canyon she'd conquered during Desert Scimitar. This mission worked because we stopped thinking about what Apaches can't do and focused on what this Apache could do here and now. A veteran with 1,000 hours raised his hand. "Ma'am, how do you weigh acceptable risk in untested operations?" Phoenix thought carefully. Captain, acceptable risk depends on the outcome. If those 3 leaders had left alive, hundreds of our people might have died. Risking 1 aircraft and 2 crew to prevent that was acceptable. But how do you know the line between risk and suicide? Training, experience, and honesty. I knew I could make the canyon because I drilled for years. I knew the Apache's limits and that my partner could make the shots because we'd trained together. She clicked to targeting data from the strike. And most of all, I knew if I didn't fly that mission, those 3 men would keep killing Americans. That made the risk not only acceptable, but absolutely necessary. The precision strike program Phoenix built soon became the model for unconventional Apache operations across the Army. Her methods were taken up by Special Operations Aviation Units, and her planning techniques were folded into the curriculum at the Army Aviation School. Yet her greatest lesson wasn't technical, it was showing that limits placed on aircraft were often limits of imagination, not of machines. Every aircraft has an envelope, she told her students. But that envelope is far wider than most pilots ever test. What separates a good pilot from a great one is the courage to see what the aircraft can really do when the mission demands it. 3 years after Desert Scimitar, Phoenix was chosen to lead development of new helicopter tactics for missions in extreme terrain. She focused on using natural landforms for concealment and advantage in heavy defense zones. Her work produced Terrain Massed Aviation Operations, a manual that became required reading worldwide and permanently altered how attack helicopters were used in combat. Still, Phoenix cared less about the acclaim than about the lives saved. The 3 leaders she had destroyed in Desert Scimitar were planning strikes that Intel said would have killed more than 300 coalition personnel. Every time we succeed on missions thought impossible, she reminded new pilots, we save lives that would be lost if we quit. That's why we push boundaries not for glory, but for those relying on us to find a way when no one else can. Because sometimes victory doesn't come from better gear or more numbers. Sometimes it comes from one pilot willing to dive into a canyon all others refused to enter, to take an approach everyone swore was too dangerous, and to fire shots others called impossible. When everything is on the line and standard methods fail, impossible flying may be the only answer. Phoenix proved Apaches could fight in ground thought impassable, that precision strikes could reach targets believed safe from helicopters, and that the phrase "no Apache can hit that target" really meant no one had yet figured out how. In a world where enemies hid in places they thought untouchable, pilots like Phoenix made the difference between defeat and victory. And that's why the Army needed her not only to fly the missions possible, but to make possible the ones deemed impossible. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to Captain Joe's Stories for more incredible tales like this.